Okay, so imagine you're the parent of a newborn baby. There she is sitting in her crib. Think about what kind of life you would want the baby to have. If you're like most people, you would want the baby to have a wonderful life. You would want it to have a life full of adventure, or a life full of peace and prosperity, a life full of friends and family, a life full of good things. You wouldn't want the baby to have a life of suffering, a life of pain, a life of loneliness. And so when we contrast these two possible lives for your baby, the life you hope the baby will have, and the life you don't want the baby to have and worry that the baby might have, we're contrasting different ways in which the baby's life could go for her. We're contrasting different welfare levels that the baby's life might have. So, welfare, well being, these are all concepts relating to how well a life goes for someone. Fair or well being is made up of a variety of values. There's different things that might cause someone's life to go well for them. And they don't always harmonize. Sometimes they come into conflict. Sometimes we have to trade off one value for another if we're seeking to live a good life, if we're seeking to live a life high in welfare. And the way those values contribute to well being or welfare isn't the same for everyone. So you could have one person who enjoys reading, and reading contributes a lot to their well-being, and another person who isn't very good at reading, or is good but doesn't enjoy it, and reading doesn't contribute much to their well-being. So there are a variety of values that make up well-being. Sometimes they come into conflict, and the way those values contribute to well-being might not be the same for everyone. One value that many people think contributes to well-being is autonomy. And autonomy is the ability to make decisions in accordance with your own values. It's getting to do what you want according to what you value, what you care about, getting to make your own decisions about what to do. And here's two examples in which your autonomy might be infringed upon. So imagine there's a patient who, for religious reasons or whatever reasons, doesn't want to have a blood transfusion. Nevertheless, the patient's doctor forces them to have a blood transfusion against their will. And that, in this case, the person's autonomy is reduced. They want to make a certain decision in accordance with their own values. They want to avoid a blood transfusion, but they're not able to make that decision because the doctor forces them to have a blood transfusion. Or imagine you're on an international flight. The attendant asks you if you want chicken or beef for your meal. You're a vegetarian and you would prefer not to have either, but your blood sugar is low. You don't want to go into shock. And so you decide to opt for the chicken. But it might turn out that there was a vegetarian option all along that the attendant didn't mention. And maybe the attendant didn't mention it because it's cheaper for some reason for the airlines to provide you with a beef or chicken meal than it is for their vegetarian meal. And so the attendant was just trying to save the company money. Well, in that case, because of you weren't fully informed about your options, you weren't able to make a decision in accordance with your own values. Your own values dictate going vegetarian rather than eating meat, but you were only informed of the meat eating options. And so your autonomy was limited by a lack of information. So, here in these two examples, we've got two ways in which your autonomy can be reduced. Your ability to make decisions in accordance with your values can be reduced. One way it can be reduced is by just somebody taking control and forcing you to do something. But there are more subtle ways that autonomy can be reduced. For example, somebody can fail to inform you about your options, suggest to you that you've only got two options, chicken or beef, when you've got a third option. So, autonomy, some people think, is one thing that makes a life go well for a person, one thing that contributes to a good life, a life high in well being. There are different ways in which autonomy can be infringed upon.